Welcome to Thriving Rockstar with Alex Drake, and today's guest is Kenny Werner. How are you, Kenny?
I'm well, thank you.
That's
How are you?
that's great. I'm well. Yeah, I'm thankfully, this is strange times that we're going through at the moment.
Yep.
Um,
How are you?
I'm pretty good actually. I moved
Good.
upstate here in New York just a few months ago, right before like the pandemic, which is very lucky. Otherwise, I'd be in Brooklyn. That's where I was before.
Which is a very hip place to be, though. But I understand. What I would like to do is drive into. I'm up in the Catskills too,
Hmm.
about an hour away from Alec, and I'd love to drive into town now and just take a walk around Times Square with nobody there.
Oh yeah.
Wear a mask, but like with the lights on,
Mm.
walk, maybe sit down on those stairs and meditate with nobody there. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. I have meditated in Times Square once
Yeah, but there's
with all the people there, but without
right.
everybody
Just
there.
say it. Set up now for your meditation.
Right. I mean, that's the real challenge, right? Meditate when there's like so much going on, but be able to just be
That's
still.
always the real challenge.
That's always a challenge, right?
Yeah, it's always either you're working on the inside or you're completely manipulated by the outside, and it's usually some percentage of one or the other. And if you understand that that's the equation, then you might spend more time shifting the percentage towards the inner walls, rather than the outer walls. And I would say with the outer walls being restricted now, it's probably the best opportunity to work on blowing down the inner walls.
That's right. That's right. One of my early forays into meditation and into self development and all that, where I just consumed a lot of books on the topic. And one of those books was Effortless Mastery, and I went through the audio programs. I was doing your exercises on the train on the way to school in the city. I went to audio school for some time.
Ah,
Yeah, and during that period, that was just kind of it really helped me. It centered me, and it really changed my relationship to my instrument and to my vision of myself in general. So
can't do better than that.
yeah. So how did you come about writing that book, and what led to that?
Well, what led to it is several years of teaching. I never intended to be a teacher, never cared about it. I don't think I care about it now, but I have grown to really care about my students.
Hmm.
I don't care about teaching, but I care about them. But what happened was, that's a long story, but I'll try to make it shorter. Uh,
Take
Arnie
your
Lawrence,
time.
Arnie Lawrence, who used to be the head of the new jazz program at the new school, he kind of created it, and he
Hmm.
had some very liberated concepts there, but it wasn't big on structure. And so he had like all the teachers there was like the heaviest cats. And so one day he asked me to sub for Larry Willis, a great piano player. And I said, man, I don't teach. He said, pays $150. And I said, what time? This is back in 1980 something.
Right.
So I go down there and it's a test. It's a midterm. I'm saying, great, I make 150. I'm just like a homeroom teacher. I just have to sit here. They do that test. They hand it in. They're gone. Great. I'm glad he thought of me. So I'm sitting there. They're doing it. And like there's some heavy musicians today, I believe were in that class, like Larry Goldings, and if you know the jazz guys, uh, Peter. Anyway, it doesn't matter who was in there, but some that they became quite noted jazz players.
Hmm.
So they handed in the paper, and they're leaving. And Arnie goes, no, wait a minute. Everybody go sit down. Kenny, show him some of your shit. Show him some of your shit. Arnie, if I was a terrible student, so if I had just finished a midterm, I would want to leave. And these kids generally hadn't heard of me yet. I mean, the world, that very small jazz world knew me from a few different associations. But, they did. Maybe some of them knew me. Maybe they did. I don't even know. So I said, well, okay. I looked at the test, and the first question was, what is the first chord of Body and Soul? So I said, well, I don't know. I was always an improviser as a teacher. So I said, okay, let's try this. What's the first chord of Body and Soul? Someone raised their hand and said, E flat minor. I said, wrong. I went, what? Because actually it is. So someone else said A flat sus, which is a good substitute for E flat minor.
Hmm.
Wrong. So no matter what they said, I said wrong. So now these kids, this was in the 80s, at the birth of the jazz police.
Hmm.
which was a younger generation that they thought they knew what it was all about, because they had a leader, I won't mention any names, who thought he knew what it was all about. So suddenly had these younger players with all these opinions. I mean, when I grew up in the 70s, nobody tried to sound like anybody else. Everyone was trying. In fact, the good thing about the 70s, it was all about artistry and mysticism. Mm. The bad thing, it wasn't too much about discipline. Mm-hmm. So you had players that could stuff a Harmon mute in their trumpet and on a vamp and sound like Miles instantly.
Right.
And you didn't even know the cat could play.
Right.
In the 80s, the one thing was really right. Somebody said some of these cats are jive. I said, okay, that's true. But then they became uber trained and disciplined, which created a super class of players in the 90s that are still around today. Dave Douglas, Brad Meldau. What it does, they were creative. The guys in the 80s weren't really creative. All they were trying to do, like one young kid sounded like Jackie McLean. Actually, there's a band that sounded exactly like Miles's band with Wayne Shorter but it was Winton and Branford and Kenny Kirkland, and Kenny sounded like Herbie, we didn't know in the early 80s, what is this? This band sounds exactly like another band. And nobody was ever going for that. But the 80s became about that. So anyway, then in the 90s, I saw what it was all about. The creativity of the 70s was revisited by the cats in the 90s. They said, wait a minute, there's some of that open stuff we need to pay attention to. But unlike the guys in the 70s, they were really well trained. So I believe new stuff started to happen somewhere in the 90s, which you see today. It's just a phenomenal, flowery, incredible players. Some with creativity, some with not, but there's no doubt it's the highest level on just level playing that's ever been. So anyway, so I said this, whatever they said chord, I said, no, that's not right. So they started yelling at me. Man, what are you talking about? What kind of shit is this? So I really didn't know where I was even going, but I was enjoying these young punks were getting angry. All I knew is I was enjoying that. So finally I said, you want to know? And I said, any chord could be the first chord of Body and Soul. So they all went, oh, this is one of these jive 70s guys. That's bullshit. I said, well, I don't know. Call out a chord and we'll see. So someone said D major 7. It could never work. D major 7 with a sharp 9. Go up a half step to E flat minor. They said G major with a sharp 5. All you have to do is get the melody to A flat sus.
Right.
Said C major. Try it over C major. So what I showed them in one lesson was the best harmony lesson they ever got.
Wow.
So I realized that just doing what I do when I play, just improvising, I was probably an incredible teacher. Now, Arnie saw this, and he had me subbing for every teacher that was out. So in other words, Jackie Byard was there, Walter Davis. Joe Chambers. The real cats. Cats that played with Miles in the 50s. It was incredible. But as is the tradition of jazz, at least one of them didn't show up every day. So I was like teaching every day, subbing for someone's class. And I started to improvise this shit about harmony and rhythm and melody and a certain space that you play in. And what I was channeling was all the stuff that would eventually become the book Effortless Mastery. And some guys, Peter Bernstein, a great guitar player, he still says to me, man, you were so funny in those classes. I'd be on the floor showing them what something feels good, like when you're in a tub. And I'm saying, and then you start thinking, yeah, but when I get out of this tub, I got to practice. And then you start to lose it,
Right.
All just coming out.
Right.
And then what happened in I don't know if it was one of the early 90s, I did an IAJE. That was the International Jazz Educators Association. And I gave this speech. It was based on, first thing, everybody was walking around this convention like everything that we're doing was so important. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, did I walk into the wrong ballroom? This is jazz. How important could that be? Nobody listens to it. So anyway, I get up there and I said, this reminds me of a Star Trek convention. And everybody cheered. So that was the beginning. This video is still available, by the way, because Jamie Abersol, who is the god of products for jazz education, was videoing it. right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was the one that eventually published the book. So he videoed the whole thing, and afterwards he was so excited, he sent VHSs to different schools. So then I started to get calls to go to a school and play, of course, but actually talk.
Right.
I hadn't done that. I'm thinking, what the hell is this? I walk into a school in California, and there was no internet yet. We're still talking about well, there was, but most people weren't doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't do it through that. You still did it through the mail. And I look on the door of this band director's door, and there's a quote on there from me, from this video. And I don't get it yet. I'm going, what the hell is this? You know, I'm a piano player. I just want to gig, or I want to write some music or play some music. And of course I want to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but this burgeoning new industry was coming out. What was coming out of my mouth? So anyway, I started to be called to do lecture. In other words, it began with these classes. Then what happened at the new schools, Arnie Lawrence had a policy. You shouldn't have to study with the teachers at this school. We're in New York City. You pick the teacher and we'll pay for it. Mm. That was brilliant. And I don't know if it exists anymore. It doesn't exist anywhere else. That meant, you know, if Chick Corea happened to be living in New York City, if you could get him to give you a lesson, the school would at least pay what they paid towards it. That's cool. Anybody could be. It was incredible. In New York City, there's no reason you should be bound to anyone. I still agree with that, you know?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, today it should be globally. Like, you should be able to take a lesson with anyone online and should apply in the same way.
Well, that's going to be the new norm.
Right.
But for now, I mean, for then, you know, there might have been someone everybody wants to study with, but he didn't happen to teach in that school. Right. So anyway, suddenly all the kids were taking lessons with me. I mean, I had about 30 of the kids. I don't even know how many there were. It was a small school at that time. It was only in its second year. And 30 of them at one point were all studying with me. So I loved this. Not only was I subbing for someone's class every day, but I had lessons. And at the end of the week, since they weren't really set up yet, you would just go to the office and pick up your check.
Right.
So like, and this is 1987, 88, something like that. Mm-hmm. I'd go in there, I get a check right there for $1,500. No, nothing taken out. I go, whoa. So I just subbed the rest of that semester. And then the administrator, they finally brought in the third year, he hired me, and then I was part of the school. Mm-hmm. And I was there for a few years and then eventually went to NYU for 12 years. But anyway, in all that time, from about the mid-'80s to 95, I was known for these concepts, the space. I would do meditations with people there. I didn't call them meditations. I'd say, close your eyes. Now imagine you're in Carnegie Hall. Mm-hmm. But you are light, and every time you touch the instrument, it's light. And you're so far away from caring about where you are. Carnegie Hall or Carnegie Deli. In other words, I was unwittingly channeling stuff that has great backup. If you go back thousands of years to the Vedas or the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, mm-hmm. I didn't know that. You know, I had read the Sufi message, Zen and the Art of Archery, but it was me. It wasn't my erudition. It was my inner experience. I had an avatar-like thing. I just was like that, you know. But unlike others, I'm not saying the only one, I could explain it.
Right.
So there's three elements here. One, you can explain it eloquently. Two, you have it. And three, it's helpful if you play your ass off. Because some guys have written the best books who are the saddest players.
Right.
I was almost the only one that had this trifecta, you know. Right. So after all those years doing these lectures, there were some cats following me around to these lectures wherever with tape recorders. And I started to think, well, they wanted to learn it, is my assumption. They wanted to catch. I thought, but then I started to get paranoid. I said, you know, one of these hookers is taping it. He might write a book from it. I said, I better write a book. Honestly, that's why I started to write a book. So I just booked a thing with the Danish Musicians Union at this beautiful house of some friends of mine that had a full glass wall in their living room, and that overlooked Sweden.
Nice.
From Denmark, right? And I did a 3-day clinic because I could get everything out from soup to nuts. Mm-hmm. Every lick, they'd all become licks now, just like in music. Right. And all I had to do is go through every one of them, and I got everything out that I had developed over that 10 years. And then I went home and I bought a computer because I never had a computer because I was always afraid of what you have to do to learn them.
Right.
That's part of what I write about effortless mastery. People that build up these delusions.
Mm-hmm.
But I was going to get a word processor anyway because I sure wasn't going to write it on a typewriter.
Right.
But let me get a computer. It's got a word processor in it. And then finally I found out how easy it was to use a computer. But I just transcribed the entire 3 days. Every time I thought I heard a subject that was similar, I put it in a certain folder. And the names of those folders were, many of them became the names of the chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to do, I'm not a writer, so I am now, because I've written a new book, but I haven't gotten a publisher yet because I want to see what's possible. I mean, I could publish immediately, but I want to see what's possible.
Do you have a name for it yet?
Yes. It's called Becoming the Instrument.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys heard it first.
You heard it first, or maybe second or third. But anyway, so I, not being a writer at that time, I would just then read back. Of course, me speaking, there's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of broken sentences. There's a lot of interrupted thoughts.
It just flow.
I just rewrote it like, what did the guy say if you weren't saying it live? I just transcribed it and then retranscribed it into English. And I had the book, basically. I then had a few academics who are good musicians, but they were also my students at that point, studying this thing, which, by the way, never had the name Effortless Mastery until I actually wrote the book. The title came from this. Years earlier, I had already started to write some articles. Someone asked me from a holistic newspaper, you know, like those papers, like the Village Voice, but it was a holistic, about health and holistic. That stuff was real big in the 80s. You know, after everybody OD'd in the 70s, the whole holistic thing started to catch on in the 80s, you know.
Right.
I wrote this article, and the editor titled it Effortless Mastery, which I liked the title, but I never thought of it again. But when I titled the book even, I thought, do I go with my brain or do I go with the space? My brain says, who are you to title this thing Effortless Mastery? They're going to think that you're saying you're a master or whatever. And your friend, you know, when you think of what people think of you, it's amazing. You only think about 12 people.
Right.
You know, it's not like you think about the masses. You think about 12 people that might make fun of you.
Right.
You know? So I just said, no, this time I'm not going with my brain. I'm going with my faith. Effortless Mastery has some light to it. And if I get kidded from a few people, too bad. And I'm so glad I did. Now, it is a term that has light to it. Anyway, that's the entire story of how I got to having written that book, and plus playing and getting more of a name that way and doing my own projects and all that. But one of the great things about it for my music, for one thing, it was more work because I'd be invited places with my trio, but I would always be asked to do a master class along with it. I was now known as some kind of a mystical educator or something.
Right.
You know, every band, every music director would have that book in their hand when they picked me up at the airport, and it would be curled up like, you know, you'd think the pages stuck together. You know, I mean, it really helped people who had already been in pain for many years.
Right.
And I look at, there's a lot of teachers that I say are students that have been wounded for a lot longer than students. They're just younger, you know, but the wound doesn't go away just because you get older.
Right.
So that's what happened, you know, like, so it gave me more gigs. But the other thing is I had been burned a few times with reviews. Not that I cared that much, but of course I did. Like we did a Far Out record with my trio, but the guy that reviewed me reviewed the record before, which sounded like just a beautiful trio, and he didn't like Far Out. So like, you know, one of the things in jazz that was surprisingly limited back in the 70s and the 80s, and I do believe it's opened up. I think a jazz guy has joined the world. A lot of young ones do something on themes that matter to humanity. But back then, if you look at Train or you look at Bill Evans or whatever, if you wanted to look at it in a sort of a jaundiced sort of way, jaundiced, but, you know, like a little bit of a, you know, let's put it this way, from a far perspective, you might say, every one of these records sounds the same. You would have to know what was going on to see the incredible differences, right? So once you had a voice in these records, you had the same thing. So the first record I did of my own, I did one in the 76 called Ken Werner at the time, plays the music of Bix Beiderbecke, Duke Ellington, James P. Johnson, and George Gershwin. And I was hired to make that record because I had been growing up a stride piano player and classically trained. So, but my first real record was something from Enger Records, which is a German company in Munich. And then the guy comes see me play when I play in Munich. And I did something. One night I brought toys I played with. Another night I did this. I was more of a TV guy than a music guy. And, now you've seen a lot of that. But honestly, you didn't see hardly any of it when I was doing it. And he said to me, I don't think you're going to be successful because you do something different every time, every record. I think I've done another one somewhere, And I said, that's why I'm not going to be successful? He said, yeah, because the jazz thing was, this is your voice, this is your atmosphere. I mean, whoever it was, even if they were out, Cecil Taylor. Mm-hmm. Basically, if you were an eagle and you heard it, you wouldn't be able to tell one Cecil Taylor, a bear, you wouldn't be able to tell one Cecil Taylor record from another. You just hear, and that was the thing. And so I do a record that was completely different from the previous one, and it wouldn't be reviewed by the right cat. But once I wrote the book, I became a little bit of an anomaly. He wasn't the inside cat. He wasn't the outside cat. He's the cat that wrote that book. Mm. So let's see what he's playing,
Right.
It helped in a few ways.
Sure. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I mean, you kind of, you created a voice through that, people paid attention.
Well, people knew, it was from the space. It was, the focus was what I believe is what it should be on. The music is incidental. It's all about what state of mind you're playing it from. Mm-hmm. Because if I just did this for a whole day, it could transform an entire planet. Mm-hmm. So it has nothing to do with expertise. It has to do with the intention of the player. And I got more and more interested in that as I taught that, and less interested in the actual music I was making, which, this is the message, in case you're not into that, it made the music better. Mm-hmm. I know everybody's into that. Everybody, they might mess with the occult, but that's only because someone told them they would play better. If there's one thing musicians care about maniacally, narcissistically, myopically, it's playing better. Right. And that's their biggest weakness. Because as I say in the book, think about a time when you needed so much to play better. How'd you play? And they usually go like that. And I say, no, a time when it didn't matter how'd you play, and they usually go like that. Say, great, now that you know that, you'll never care again, right? And then they left.
Right.
We are more similar than we think we are, right. Because that's when the journey begins. Wait a minute. When I care about this music, it's not the music I care about, it's how good I sound. So in a way, you're edging the music out. And it's about how good you can feel about yourself. Mm-hmm. So when that happens, that's where you get a lot of ex-musicians. Mm. Finally find something that does work, and, wow, I don't need to mess with that self-esteem thing anymore. Or because they're so successful, they actually can play without beating themselves up. But anyway, so it started there. Now, how do we, the brain is a programmable organ. So how do we reprogram it, deprogram it, like I said in the book, and reprogram it? Mm-hmm. So you have to deprogram it from music being the reason you feel good about yourself. Music can make you feel good, but let's not make your level of playing what makes you feel good, because then you're going to place too much emphasis on that, and then you're going to play bad.
Right. And you're going to feel bad.
Even if you agree with the Buddhism of that,
right.
Even if you don't, it makes you play better. Isn't that what you're watching this for? You're hoping you're going to hear something to make you play better. When people come to Berklee, these days there's so much, I guess I was pioneering a little bit, because these days all over the place in music schools, there's so much emphasis on wellness. Mm. I don't like the word anymore. I feel like wellness is in my insurance policy, so it probably has no meaning anymore. But, here's the point. Nobody went to Berklee to get well.
Right.
They came to Berklee to play their ass off. Effortless Mastery postulates or posits.
Okay.
That there are certain ways of getting well that make you practice better and play better faster. And more important, love yourself while you're doing it.
That's important.
Well, it makes you play better. Or you can pass the aspect of music, which is only one manifestation of that. See, my new book, I think, it still comes from a musician, but it passes that. It's not about music. Mm-hmm. It's about the universe and life through experiences that were had through music. Mm. And the book did that. The first book did that too, but I didn't know that. When I got emails from businessmen, golfers, soldiers, people who had bad diseases, that this book somehow turned them around some way. I realized I accidentally wrote, see, that whole thing came out of me. So I do believe in higher forces, and sometimes they pick a megaphone, and I guess they picked me. I always like to say God had a sense of humor, whatever. And really, it can be translated, people, into what they do. A guy told me, one of my neighbors, I read your book. I didn't understand anything, but next day I shot the best golf of my life. And I didn't understand that yet. I said, really? Businessmen saying, if we could bottle and can this is a great thing to take around to corporations. I said, let's do it. I've done it with Google a couple of times, but I haven't really done it yet. But of course it can. It's a universal message. The second book intentionally exponentializes it that way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like it really does have a place in a wider audience. I mean, you mentioned Zen and the Art of Archery, and there's Inner Game of Tennis and books like that like, pertain to a particular subject, but really are applicable to all humans. And
the reason those two books are successful is because they weren't just read by tennis players,
right.
And Lord knows they weren't just read by archers.
Right, of course, yeah.
Mechanics, what is it? Bicycle, motorcycle maintenance.
Yes, yeah, it's another one.
I didn't read that one, but I mean, I got the message already. I don't need to read book after book.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, the message is like once you get it, it's like something, it's there already, right? And then somebody's capturing it in language, but it's something within us.
Absolutely, you just hit the main point. We are not reaching for something that we don't possess. We're trying to connect with it. So some gurus would say you're trying to attain what you already have. And it's okay to think of it that way, but you must add the equation, but you already have it.
Right.
Don't think that there's something you're not. You're already there. So I look at it this way. When it comes to talent, again, I can use the music model. People think some of us have it, some of us don't. Yeah, I look at it this way. Everyone has it. Some of us know it, some of us don't. And that would be a rephrasing of the most important point is that it already exists within you.
Yeah, that's definitely the most important point. Now, you mentioned even like Vedic texts and stuff like that. Like, when did you study that? What was the context of that?
I didn't study it. I've referred to it.
Okay.
There's one book called The Splendor of Recognition, The Science of the Soul, which is a transcription of, you know what? Can I walk away for a second?
Sure, yeah. If you want to get it.
Because I could never pronounce it. But it is based on the Pratyabhinya Hridayam. Pratyabhinya Hridayam. And it was basically, I think, a 14th or 15th century text.
Oh, wow.
Which, by the way, what I love about Indian texts is they're all expressed in sutras, which can be sung. So it's like, I think it's 24 sutras. And if we think we discovered something by the 20th century about the mind, forget it. These cats had it down that we're only coming to now about the object and subject and what you're aware of. And it's great. That's one, definitely Bhagavad Gita, never finished it. But one of the lessons I use the most is as Arjuna is about to go into battle, his chariot, and he doesn't want to do it. He sees what's going on Earth, and he says, man, I don't want to kill my uncles and nephews and cousins. And his chariot driver goes, like, Disney, and becomes Krishna, the blue man. I have a tune. Everybody go on YouTube and find it, Little Blue Man. It's a very cool tune with my incredible trio, Ari Honig on drums and Johannes Weidmuller on bass. It becomes a blue man, and thus becomes like 1,000 verses. And why he has to just go do it, because this is not happening anyway. It's all a play. Now, am I there? No. I mean, if you start coming after me with a knife, I don't think I'm going to be thinking, oh, wow, it's a play. Or if this thing messes my world up, I go, oh, shit. I mean, I'm just human, but I am working at one thing. Increasingly becoming aware of and implementing the reality that it is all a play. Because I can give to humanity better when I'm not so stuck in it. And what you think or what he said or what he got and I didn't get, the paradox of it is that the more you detach, the more you detach from your performance, the better it gets. Paradox?
Oh yeah, for sure.
You want more power? Surrender. I think that's a paradox,
That is definitely a paradox. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the same way, so Krishna educates him on what this is and who he is and what it all is. And that's the Bhagavad Gita.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to attempt a little bit of the Ramayana, but, it's all the same thing. The transcendental nature of the physical realm, which is not to denigrate how painful it can be. But what are we doing on Earth? I believe, whether we know it or not, our whole job and everything we go for, whether it's a drug or killing somebody or whatever, everybody's going for this liberation.
Mm-hmm.
And it presents itself in different forms. If I kill this guy, I'm going to feel liberated. I mean, that's where that guy's level is now. Now, my job to see that without guilt, shame, or I'm not there. I know a few people that are, but I'm not one of them. However, that's still the equation, whether I get there or not on a certain issue. So when it comes to something as insignificant as playing a musical instrument, they see that ring that has some people saying, what? But yeah, this is, it's insignificant compared with something else, your life. It's insignificant. You know how this is, and one of the things I talk about in the book is breath. Mm-hmm. And in the second book, breath is one of the main of 2 or 3 subjects, right? So breath is infinitely more important than music. Mm-hmm. Because if you stop breathing right now, in probably a minute or less, if someone said to you, I can help you breathe again, but you've got to give up music, you go, yeah. So we can't disagree on this.
Right.
Breath is infinitely more important than music. But here's the thing. If you play while focusing on your breath, you become divine. And it really doesn't matter what you play. Suddenly, he's playing some new wave. No, put it in the wrong key, There really are no wrong notes from that only slightly elevated state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can go on to, I have a story in my book of a couple of Rebbes.
Uh-huh.
I play with Andy Statman, a great, nearly Hasidic clarinet player. He's just very religious. I don't know, maybe he's not Hasidic. And he gave me some stories. How much can you transcend the music and how much can you transcend life? And he tells me this one story about a Rebbe that had the gout or something and had to have his leg amputated. So he went before World War II. He went to Berlin because that's where the best doctors were. And the doctor said, we have to take this leg off. We don't have any, or you're too old to have antiseptic. It'll kill you. So the guy said, just take it off. And he started composing, I forget the numbers, but it's in my book, something like a 34 stanza musical composition about the destruction of Israel. Saw the skyline of Berlin, and he started to think about the destruction of Israel and all the burnt out buildings or whatever he saw. I'm paraphrasing now. And he started to compose this 34 stanza piece, musical composition. When he was done, the leg was gone. So there's no limit to how far you can grow until you become love itself, I guess. And then nothing matters. And yet you're available for, the uplifting of your brothers and sisters and the plants. I'm not there. I don't really care about plants. But as I keep moving, I care about them more than I used to.
Right. I hear that. Now, on the ground level, say a musician's out there on tour, dealing with like the, all the pressures included in that lifestyle,
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but I'm just
go ahead. I get what you're saying.
But you get where I'm coming from, yeah. So, is there a pre-show routine that you'd recommend for somebody in that space? Because for me, I meditate in the green room. I don't play. I just sit and meditate, and then when I come out on stage, I'm with the audience, right? And I'm excited with them for what's to come.
Well, you just answered your own question. Meditation, if that's not too formal a term. See, the funny thing about meditation is sometimes the term itself triggers this response in people. Oh, I can't do that. I've tried to do that. I
Oh
can't do.
yeah.
So I have a much simpler idea, which I use. I like to say, this is so simple, even an American can do it. That's in this era, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You're already breathing, right? I know that. Watch yourself breathe. Don't change your breathing. Just watch yourself do it. You know, put your awareness on the fact that you're breathing. Like now, don't shake your head yes. Just do it. Just watch yourself breathe. There you go. Takes a second. You can't watch yourself breathe and think at the same time. You're in meditation right now by that other term.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell them to do it for 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather them have to stop when they don't want to than keep it going while they're losing it.
Mm.
Just like the groove in music. I'd rather let it go before I lose it. Don't try to extend the groove. Quit before it's done, and then it'll beckon to you. Come back, come back. So it's the same thing with that. Now you're in a totally different state of mind, and when you watch yourself breathe for, I don't even think 20 seconds. This is now the root exercise of what I called Effortless Mastery, and I don't know, maybe becoming something else now. I don't know. This pandemic is elevating everything. Everything I see and hear and everything I'm saying, it's elevating it. Because the outer world, I mean, the one opportunity that I hope people really think about, or I don't, but is that this is an unparalleled opportunity to expand the inner universe. I pray you'll never get a better opportunity because of all the things you can't do, you know? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm aware, I'm not a brave person, I'm aware of what could happen at any moment. But if it's not happening now, what's my choice for this moment? If I go into my conscious mind, I'm only thinking about something that's happening in an hour, and already I'm afraid. Or, of course, the big question on everybody's mind is either the pandemic or the economy, which you don't have any solutions for.
No.
Thinking about it is actually it's worse than a waste of time because it damages your psyche so you can't even do anything meaningful in the moment. Mm-hmm. So from the old terms of my first book, being in your conscious mind is like being in the thoughts of the fears of the future or regrets of the past. Being in the space is being in this moment. And in this moment is always light. It's just practicing getting into this moment. So where you did meditation, and it worked. But everybody who's watching, for example, just try to take 20 or 30 seconds and watch yourself breathe. I mean, if they see you as well as me, I don't know. Mm-hmm. You look really different than before I asked you to do that. And you still do, which means you have a predisposition towards the light. And it doesn't take much to take you there. But there's a lot of people that don't even buy the idea of light. I say, okay, great, forget it. There's no God, whatever. Who cares? Watch yourself breathe. From that, then do it whenever you think of it, because you'll be poking holes in that wall that blocks light, whatever you call light, even just feeling good. The more holes you poke into it, by repeating this 30-second exercise, the more it starts to look more like Swiss cheese. And then there are these openings where the cheese, you know, more and more times when you can choose where you want to place yourself. And from all my waking moments, I would like to place myself in this moment right now. And to do that takes a little practice. So I think I just found the simplest exercise you can possibly do, which actually is still quite effective. So I don't even remember what the question was, but that's where we ended up.
That's okay. That's not as important as where we are.
There you go.
Right. So
what's next?
Yeah. So the idea of like you found the simplest route to not getting someone to think about a thing that they need to do and give them a task. It's just kind of like, okay, just be.
It's not original, by the way.
No,
I mean,
but
a lot of different pathways or disciplines have ways, but you should understand, why am I doing any of this stuff? Because this is what you want to be free of, your own conscious mind.
Yeah.
And you can't negotiate with it, but you can focus somewhere else.
Right. Right. I mean,
That's that's very demonstrable. Check it out. Just for everybody watching, focus on your left shoulder. Just put all your awareness on your left shoulder. I mean, as much as you can pay attention inside your body, throw all that over to the left shoulder. Now you feel the slightest buzz of awareness. Maybe it's not a buzz, maybe it's just the light went on or something got activated, and it is really the energy of your awareness on the left shoulder. Now you notice how the right shoulder has disappeared until you think about the right shoulder. So I can't negotiate with my conscious mind. It's too smart for me. But if I focus elsewhere, like on watching myself breathe, whatever you can use. Sometimes I talk about a little window in here. And just like you used to look into the cookie factory, see how they make cookies? Look at the breathing factory and see how they breathe. Whatever works. To me, just the way you shifted your attention to your left shoulder, you can shift it to the palpable sensation of inhaling and exhaling. And don't need anything to change. You're just watching it. If I said look out the window, you'd look out the window. You wouldn't expect it's supposed to change your life. Because even the expectation that something would change your life is actually the reason people stop doing it. Because too much pressure, too much responsibility. Or it starts to disappoint them because their expectations have grown too high. So to do an exercise with the lack of expectation of, say, brushing your teeth, like I'm going to watch myself breathe whenever I think about it, and I'm not going to expect anything good from it, is probably the best way to feel this organic transformation take place. Yet it will stop as soon as you notice how much better you're doing.
Right.
And then start over. Hey, man, this leads to nothing. But I can watch my breath as easily as I can look out the window. And every time you start over, it just is a way of refocusing away from the conscious mind, which sometimes I lovingly call the shithole.
Right.
When I go down that route, which I call it the left fork for me, I don't know why, but somehow the more times I do it, the more it becomes. There's a fork in the road. Like Yogi Berra said, when you get to a fork in the road, take it. So anyway, that's just a little joke. The left fork goes to the sinkhole, the shithole, the world of thoughts. Now, I'm old enough to know that when I go into the world of thoughts, I can recognize it going, you know what? That never ends very well. When I go into it, it might start well. It might go like, the mind is a seducer. That's the devil sitting on your shoulder. So I'm not thinking, and the conscious mind goes, hey, isn't that great? You're doing great, man. You're not thinking. I go, yeah, I'm not thinking. When we get home, we got to write about this. Yeah, I got to get home. You know what I'm saying? Step by step, it gets me in there. And once it gets me in there, it suddenly becomes quicksand. Yeah, but when are you going to get to teach again? What about this pandemic, man? You know, you don't see my hand going like,
yeah.
You know, it's like the mind gets hold of me, and then my particular life, whether it's a curse or a blessing, I was not one of those people who was predisposed to think good thoughts. I thought a lot of what-if thoughts, and they just ruined a lot of days in my life, you know? So I see myself going that way, and I fumble around. If darkness is approaching, I fumble around for the light switch. Am I going to use this phrase or this affirmation, or am I just going to watch myself breathe? Or am I going to use a mantra, which I was given by a beloved spiritual teacher of mine, you know, which the power of any mantra is great. The power of that particular mantra is that was given to me by an enlightened being. Or am I going to use things I'm only learning recently from another source? You know, it doesn't matter. All the sources are talking about the same thing. Some of them are more direct, and some of them have more detours and circuitous route because they're trying to help you move towards it. Moving towards the light is very much feels like pushing against gravity for most people. There's a few enlightened beings where they're drawn to that. And I feel like I'm making progress. The level of the gravity is lessening. And music is only just a little piece of that. I do this. I've proven everything I need to prove. So back to your original question, which I still happen to remember. If I'm in the green room, I may watch Twilight Zone on Netflix. I may watch West Wing, which I must have watched the entire series between 10 and 15 times.
Wow.
Partially during the Bush administration, and now. I finally stopped. I've OD'd on West Wing. And now I'm watching Mad Men over and over again. But I might sit there and watch Mad Men. They go, it's time to play. Oh, okay. Close my phone, go out and play. Because what I have to remind myself is I don't have to do anything. I'm trained, and what I'm trained to do what has to happen, and the highest version of it will be me going out there not even aware that it's any different from when I was watching Mad Men in my dressing room. That's the ultimate for me. You can even get trapped a little bit thinking, I'm going to meditate so that I become blah, 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 blah. And maybe you in the audience do become one, but not whenever you've expected that to happen. So it's the same thing, you know?
Right.
I go like, I was once playing with Toots Thielemans in Carnegie Hall, and it was a tribute to him. So, I mean, well, or we were playing there. And he's sitting there and he's going, man, you know, he's a Belgian. And he's going, this is some serious shit, man, you know, with a Belgian accent, you know, a little bit French accent. Carnegie Hall. And I said to him, Toots, this Carnegie Hall. Across the street is the Carnegie Deli. Carnegie Hall, Carnegie Deli. And he laughed. But you see, it didn't matter to him. He could obsess before the gig. It was amazing. But his love of the music was so strong that it would just wash away whatever drama he was going in before he got out there. You know, there's different ways of getting there, obviously.
Sure.
Not everybody went there the way I'm going there or the way I've gotten there. But the whole point is to let the light burn out all these trivialities, like how good that gig goes. You say, but triviality? Well, would you play better if you thought the gig was a triviality? Or would you play better if you thought that your entire reputation was on the line? So you answer it yourself. Then it becomes a question of what are you going to practice? Philosophy is inert when it's not, there's no practice attached. Like I read the hippest book in the world. That might get you a week or two of grace. But then you're going to fall into your old patterns because your mind is a programmable organ. And to reprogram or deprogram, you have to have repetition that at least starts to approach the amount of times you went over here. I'm a shit person unless I play well. How many musicians would not voice that, but they actually feel that? That's that unspoken tension about I'm about to play. Yeah. Am I going to be a piece of shit or am I going to be valid? And I'm not even talking about am I valid? There's a lot of musicians in a purgatory like that, and I believe Effortless Mastery is most helpful for them. And I'm trying to set up I have an Effortless Mastery Institute at Berklee, still at Berklee. I want to set up an organization, an institution, like the Center for Enlightened Musicianship. Point is not who plays good and bad. The point is how do musicians get to the point where music gives them everything they thought it would, which will at the same time result in better playing.
Of course.
And we need someone who believes in that. And then we're going to set up an edifice for that. We're going to take the yoke of how good do I sound off our necks and focus on, you know, being the instrument. There's nothing better. It feels much better to be an instrument than a musician, I'll tell you that.
For sure. Yeah, no, this is, you know, what you're speaking of and what you're communicating here and what all these texts they're all just arrows pointing to what once described is not what it is, right? It's like the map is not the territory.
You got it again. You must be a student because you got it again. What's described is no longer is. Lately I've been looking at the Course in Miracles quite a lot. It just seemed relevant now. And the first thing it does, not the last thing, the first thing, it says this hand doesn't mean anything. This piano doesn't mean anything. And it's a funny thing. It's a transmission. Right. So it's not just the words. And I'm feeling it. But everything I've done to this point might have made it feel like that was relevant at this moment. I can't say, oh, I've been banging into walls till I found this book. You know, it's everything I did got me to this point. It's a question of if you're looking for absolution through your whole life by how good you play, let me give you my condolences because I think that's a shame. If you're looking for absolution by understanding who you are and celebrating it by the fact that you play, let me congratulate you. That's a life well spent.
You know, I found myself last night even just looking at this one player who's just at such a level that, you know, it like made me look at myself unfavorably. And, you know, and I had to take a step back and just like think like, oh, man,
watch yourself breathe.
Yeah, watch myself breathe. And
you don't want to do that then. You want to convince yourself.
Right.
Well, it's not as much of a disparity.
Right.
You know, we go into this egoistic stuff. We wouldn't even say it out loud.
Right.
So embarrassing. But I remember there's a story in my first book, you know. Me and my teacher, the guy in Brazil, who said, be kind to yourself, which at that time was an absolute revelation. So we're listening to Horowitz one day, and he had achieved that. So he's kind of going like this, and I'm going like this.
Right.
And I'm not embarrassed to say, I'm thinking, you know, if I practice, I'm 23, if I practiced 4 hours a day for 20 years, I think I could play like that. As stupid as that sounds, I'm not the only one thought that way. I'm the only one said it out loud.
Right.
And he taps me on the shoulder and went like that. He goes, he could read my mind pretty easily. He goes, be kind to yourself. And I went like, yeah. And suddenly I went back to the music, and I heard this incredible music that I was just enjoying. And it was just the early days. That's how, if you really want to know the interesting question, is how did I get indoctrinated to this philosophy / course of action?
Mm-hmm.
Not when I wrote Effortless Mastery, because that was the end of something.
Mm-hmm.
But in the early days, I had two, and this is in the book, two very influential teachers. One was Madame Charloff from Boston, who was like this mystical piano teacher. I never got past playing one note with her. You'd play a note, and she'd say, no, it's still a ton of bricks or whatever. Somehow the arms were supposed to defy gravity. And somehow that meant you had to elevate your vibration. But she said it her way, and it was also, she was a light. Anyway, from her, I went to Brazil to hang out with some friends from Boston who were Brazilian. I started to play there, and this guy's brother was this concert pianist who had really wrecked himself trying to keep up with that kind of thing, and he was successful.
Hmm.
And then he had to go into therapy 5 days a week, and he started using the affirmation, I must be kind to myself. When he started to feel that pressure, he said he'd have to go in the bathroom and go, I must be kind to myself. I must be kind to myself. You know, something that's been parodied now.
Right.
But at a certain time was a new truth.
Sure.
You know, Al Franken parodied that, I'm good enough. The problem is that stuff is still real, even though it's been parodied. So then he started practicing something that old piano teacher from Vienna told him, just drop the fingers on the keys, one after the other, and don't feel any pressure, basically. So he had me do nothing but that for 6 days. Actually, he told me to do it for 2 weeks. And then this beautiful Brazilian woman called me and said, why don't you and Victor come over, we'll play some duo, we'll have some scotch, we'll have a party. There was a party in her living room. And I said, well, I can't do that because I told his crazy brother I was just going to do this for 2 weeks. And she said, oh, que niño, I want to see you. I went, okay, what time, to hell with this exercise.
Right.
I didn't get lucky, in case you're kidding. But when you get that way, this exercise didn't matter anymore. So we get there, and Victor and I are about to play duo. He was a great alto player. Victor Assis Brasil, one of the greatest alto players, period. Happened to be Brazilian, but he sounded like Bird. It was amazing.
Mm.
And very like Bird and Diz, him and Claudio Radici, who did attain fame and died only recently, in America and everywhere around the world. So we start playing Autumn Leaves. And I even said to the people, I actually don't know how I'm going to play. All I've been doing for 6 days is this. So I don't even know if I can play. I actually apologized. Then we started to play, and I went like, ba-dum-ba. For the first time in my life, I wasn't playing. I was watching my hands play. In other words, they took over because for 6 days I had not bugged them about what I wanted them to play. Mm. And not only that, they played better than I did. I mean, really, the voicings I used to play was 60-40. Some of them were the right ones for jazz. Some of them were still undeveloped, depending on the key, what voicing, My lines were good, but I said in the book, I needed 13 notes to find 8 good ones. Suddenly, it was 8 notes in a 4/4 bar. Chords were perfect. The tone, which had always been strained from me going, which my friends used to think was cool. Suddenly, in 6 days, the tone sounded like Bill Evans, which is the most balanced tone, I believe, at least in jazz, that ever happened. And there was no practicing I could have done in those 6 days that would have changed my playing and upgraded all that stuff. I could have practiced 14 hours a day. It wouldn't have been that different. And what it did was there was things I had learned, but because of ego, in other words, the desire to play them, and a lot of students will relate to this, that very desire is what blocked them from happening. It's like a bottleneck of all the stuff you want to get into the music, and some can't get through. Once I relaxed, and once I wasn't doing it, it opened up to a 6-lane highway, and some voicings I didn't think I knew, I knew. It was so mystical, Alec, that to this day, it changed me. It was like a aha moment. In certain Indian cultures, it's like becoming realized, or one culture calls it Shaktipat, the Shakti, the enlightenment, or the epiphany, the moment. It was beyond an aha moment because my life changed from that point on. From that point on, I didn't know what I could accomplish with this, but I knew that I would only build up to what I could do from the state of mind I was in when I did this. And from that, I found ways of just playing free. In other words, moving wherever I want to move, but still being in the same space. And as soon as I cared about it, I dropped my hand. And then it was like playing a tune. Could I play it without participating? And then I even learned how to practice and not lose it. And that became steps 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Wow. Yeah, no, like you, it's something hard to put into words, but you manage it.
That was the other weird thing about me.
Right.
You can have it, but I know there are many musicians I can name that's what it is that's the reason they're so inspiring. Even if they don't even agree with any of what I'm saying, that's still the reason it's so inspiring. Some combination of what I just said is why Clark Terry is a perfect trumpet player. It's not just the 4th step, which is perfect precision without effort, effortless mastery. It's the notion that he's more self-supported playing with a horn than just standing there. This is possible. That what we always thought before effortless mastery is that, well, some people are like that and God bless them, and I wish I was like that. Some people have it, some people don't. Effortless mastery posits, someone let me know if that's the right word, that if you don't have it, it can be worked on and it can be gained incrementally, just like spirituality can be gained, just like awareness of the light can be gained, just like, increased virtues can be worked on. So can this freedom be worked on.
Right.
And focus, freedom and focus. I focus when I practice, but I'm free when I play.
Right. And this kind of gain is like in the opposite direction of all other kinds of gain, because it's gain in the direction of letting go rather than trying and working towards something. It's
right. But the reason
it's stripping away.
But the reason it's interesting is it is gain, but at a faster rate.
Right.
Gain by yielding.
Right.
And when you yield to what is, suddenly you're in the moment practicing. When you're thinking about what you want it to be, you practice in such a, haphazard way that nothing changes.
Right.
Most people don't even question the fact that even the ones that practice, but they never get any better. Now, they don't want to admit that. They say, well, you practice? Yes. Do you get better? I think so, but that's ego speak for no. If you got better, you'd know it. So it may work for a few people. If Keith Jarrett says to you, I worked my fingers to the bone, you don't question it. The question is, does it work for you? And luckily for me, 999 people out of 1,000 it does not work for, which was excellent for book sales. The fact is, more people can find their true self by not looking.
Yeah.
More people can find what they should practice by dropping the ego and allowing themselves to make the mistakes. All the stuff we talk about, but that's great philosophy, but what's the practice? Effortless mastery is almost the only practice, but I think there are a lot of other disciplines that would lead you to that if you applied it. Let's say you were doing Tai Chi. When you come out of Tai Chi class, pick up the guitar before you're thinking about music. Continue to think about what you achieved in Tai Chi and play the instrument, and now you're kind of getting the idea. But music, effortless mastery, is specifically that.
Right. And this is so applicable to anything. Like, it's just not exclusively for music. Like, when if I'm exercising and I'm trying to connect in that kind of way, rather than thinking, okay, I need to do this number of this and that, and it just becomes so mechanical, and I'm worried about all that. But really, the people who achieve the most in that particular arena are the ones who are just the most
Present.
the most present
Most
with what
present.
they're doing. It's like the only way to really achieve like this top level athletic ability is through that kind of presence.
Yeah, otherwise the enormity of it is too great a weight.
Yeah.
Or, see, you're lucky. You may be able to think of it egoistically, think of the whole thing you need to do, and still do it. But you know what? There's a lot of people like me. I was gifted and cursed with this. If I do it from that perspective, I don't do it at all.
Mm.
So if I thought you got to practice 2 hours, I never got to the piano.
Mm.
So I need, and so do many people, I'm just going to sit here and practice one thing for 5 minutes. When I'm done, 25 minutes might have gone by, or 50 minutes might have gone by, or 5 minutes. It's important that if I don't feel like practicing at all, that instead of not practicing, I do that 5 minutes. Then I can even set the alarm and get up and walk away.
Yeah.
So some people can do what you do. They practice with this classical guy in Brazil was able to berate himself of what he had to do and practice 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Either fortunately or unfortunately, if I tried to do that to myself, it ended up in zero practice.
Mm.
And the only way I began the practice is when I started from the same state of mind of expecting nothing as I was doing from here. Now I could pick something. By the way, this same state gives you the reality of only practicing one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that that reality didn't already exist. Let's say I'm a person that's in the light and I see this is the one thing I'm going to practice, and there's nothing else in my brain, and I'm practicing it. And you are an egomaniac that's thinking about all the things you have to practice. How many things can you practice with that attitude? The same amount as me, one thing.
Right.
So the question is, are you practicing one thing while thinking of the other 8 things you have to do, which if you're like me, which means you don't even start?
Mm.
Or you just run through that thing, but you're not absorbing anything because you're already thinking of what you have to go to next.
Right.
Or do you get into space, focus your eyes like a robot on one thing, and nothing else exists? See, when you're overwhelmed by your conscious mind, you see everything you have to do as a panoramic view, like they have the camera option, panorama view. If you're in the space, there may be other things to practice, but they're all behind the thing you're practicing. Mm-hmm. So while you're practicing this, nothing else exists in the universe that could be practiced. And when you feel like you're done with it, you move that, and there's that. And if you've lost that focus, that's a good time to get up and walk away and breathe, or take a walk, or take a glass of water, or pay a bill, or have a glass of coffee. And if you have to practice in bulk because of a gig, then you just do the best you can. But you want to practice this type of practicing. So the issue is not how many things you do it on. The issue is how long can I stay in the space and practice. If I've lost the space, just like if I've lost the space when I'm playing, right? Take your hands off the instrument. If I've lost the space while I'm practicing, walk away.
Right. Yeah, especially if there's like
practice to be done just for its own sake, not to be applied to the rest of your life. If you apply it, your ego would have won again. You apply it, you fall on your face, you go, that shit doesn't work. You do it, and then you forget about it, and you notice when you're not looking for it, how it's affecting what you do call practicing,
right.
What you do call playing. But if you look for it, that's the day you fall on your face.
Right, right.
There's a whole network to this, and it's really in the first book, but I think it's a lot in the second book once I decide where it's being published.
Right, right. Yeah, you know, and this is like you just brought to mind for me how when I'm going through my day, and I do a lot of different things, right? I have the show, you know, I have to practice, I have my band, and all these things that I've sort of like set myself up for that have kind of become monsters for me that like consume me while I'm trying to do one thing, and I'm everywhere. My conscious mind is the only way I can get anything done is if I erase everything and just only, like you said, the thing that's in front of me gets focused on.
But here's the thing. If you can't do that, there are practices to make your focus one-pointed. And it doesn't have to be effortless. If you understand to apply it to your practicing, there's one thing about meditating. You say, wow, it was really one-pointed. Then 2 hours later, you go to practice and you go, oh, gee, I sure hope I sound good. There are people involved in like somatic disciplines and spiritual practices all week, but they still become little narcissists when it's time to play. They forget all of that. And it goes back to this stupid thing. How do I sound? Am I worthy? Am I valid? You know, so here's the thing. If you understand the objective of meditation, which is one-pointed focus, as soon as, even before you're done with the meditation, right? Do it at the instrument. Then, without losing meditation, pick up the guitar and start playing.
Mm-hmm.
Share that state with the meditation. And as soon as it starts to becoming about playing, put the guitar down again. And then do the other stuff you do some other time. But let that be purified by the object of meditation or the object of Tai Chi or the object of Alexander technique. They all go for different things and they all state different goals. But really, anyone who is in the moment, in the space, they could practice Tai Chi or not, but they would have found what they were looking for.
Mm. Yeah.
And all these things are different ways, different routes to the same place, which is liberation. The people that fill their weeks with Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, yoga, whatever, they're at a level where they know cotton candy is not going to do it. They have to find the self. Now, they may not find it this whole life, but in this lifetime, they were at that level where at least they knew where to look. But there are infinite frequencies. There's somebody down here that thinks the only way to do it is to carry an AR-15 into the State House in Michigan. And that way he feels that Shakti.
Right.
That's what he understands. And you know what? He's on his way to the same place. They're all moving. And that's what we can't understand on Earth because it creates incredible pain, incredible drama. And I want to make another disclaimer. I am not there. But I certainly know that it doesn't really matter much what I play. And that has made me successful enough to really, you don't even have to have a lot of faith. Every time I've let go, I've played something that people thought was just beyond a good, what is it about his playing? I get that a lot. Or I never liked jazz, but now I was mesmerized, whatever. I'm not saying that. I hope you understand.
Oh, yeah. I'm
not even talking, it's not me talking about me. I'm trying to tell people about a state of mind.
Right.
And I know what it is.
Right.
I had a very famous musician say, God, I played with all the best piano. I mean, what is it happens when I'm playing with you? And I said, I don't know. Well, I play in an ashram 4 or 5 times a week when I'm home. That's unusual. I live where I live because I'm not mentioning any names. I know it's not, nobody wants that stuff advertised from me. But when I'm home, I've been doing this ashram, and I play the simplest chants. I mean, you can't believe how simple and sweet they are. And I've had my ego pummeled. I've been here now. Well, I've been playing it since the 90s, but now I've been here. I play the afternoon chant. And on Saturday, I play the noon chant and the evening chant. And the instructions are the same. You know, become empty and fill yourself with the purpose of that chant. That way you can incur the power of that chant. Now, that's been going on and off for the last 15, 16 years. So that plus working on hip, complex shit must be the difference. I don't know. But you know what? It's not even about the effect it has on the audience, although that is pleasing. It's the effect it has on you. Do you want music to be yet another arena where you worry, obsess, and judge yourself? Or do you want music to be the escape from all that?
Right.
That's what it was meant to be.
You know, Kenny, what's interesting, it's like you play jazz, which tends to be over thunk, right? Like people think about it too much, right?
Not the good ones.
Right. Where the real mastery is where people are just free. And I play progressive rock, progressive metal, which is also extremely complex and written out. Like it's like, you know, rigid like the classical world is.
Right.
And to actually do well in that and not to torment myself, I have to sort of like have this paradoxical state of like what you're describing this whole time of just letting go and just being okay with whatever is, you know, and only like paradoxically through that and during my practice with that, I could just actually, you know, let the parts happen and not be, you know, worried about this little quintuplet 30-second run going perfectly or whatever. Just letting things kind of like not looking like while I'm playing, not negatively anticipating what's to come.
Right.
Just like, oh my God, it's just going to work. Yeah.
Because in the beginning, the idea of not judging yourself was so revolutionary for jazz musicians. Mm-hmm. The first audience of this book was jazz musicians because they knew me. Then it became all musicians. Then it became other artists. You know, I hear from in one school, a seminary school, it's required reading. You just never know where this stuff goes. And in a theater school, it was required reading. And, you know, But everybody thought it was about just love yourself, don't judge yourself. So, of course, jazz musicians, that was their point of criticism. Oh, you think you can just play because you love yourself? I said, no, you didn't read the rest of the book. From that same egoless place, you practice for absolute precision from an effortless place. That's the fourth step. And those runs of 30-second notes didn't work because you loved yourself. They worked because somewhere along the line you must have effectively practiced them. And I actually put in a template in that book for the most highest level of focus for practicing something, and having that thing not just change that one line, that one rip, but changing the level of your playing by practicing 2 bars of music. Because at that point, it's all about muscle memory. Mm-hmm. We never realize that because our ego's always been tyrannizing our body. Play this, play that. When you get the mind out of the way, everybody's got one thing in common. Their minds are not what plays. It's their body that plays. That also cannot be argued. Mm-hmm. So when you get your ego out of the way, you train the body. So what does the mind do? Well, if I'm playing, the mind goes, yeah, that's fun. The only time it gets in the way is if my body's not trained to play when I'm playing. Mm-hmm. But without the mind, I don't go places that I'm not trained to go. And because I've trained the body without the ego, I'm not saying I can play everything, but I can really play everything that I can play.
That's true.
Because the objective is effortless mastery. Otherwise, how would it be usable?
Right.
For example, if I'm playing an 8, okay, great. But if I play an 11, I'm not going to play an 11 because I love myself. 11 has to become as comfortable as 8, right, as 7 and 5 already have become. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel cooler in 7 than I do in 8, you know. You probably never heard 7 in that.
Right.
Same thing. So.
Nice.
You see the way I'm gawking at you?
Yeah.
Do that if I have to count. So I'm not ready to play for you with 9. Actually, I'm kind of ready. I've been working on confirmation. No, not confirmation. Anthropology. Sorry. I can really play it. But I can't play any tune anytime in 9. So I'm not done with 9. And 11 I could sort of do too, but I can't play any tune. I got to figure it out. If it's something I have to figure it out, I'm not going to play it in public yet. Mm-hmm. Like my latest CD, which is now a year or two ago, called The Space. Finally called a record The Space, solo piano. There's like 3 or 4 vamps on there that I was ready to play. When I say I'm ready to play them, I'm not going to display them to you. I'm going to play them and stay in the space. And what comes out, so it came out really smooth because I was ready to play them. So there's a great emphasis on effortless precision, because if the precision takes effort, it's going to get in the way of the main message, which is the music that wants to come through me. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't really understood as easily because there's only a little portion of the book dedicated to effortless precision, which is the 4th step. Now, the second book, there's a lot of emphasis on muscle memory. Mm-hmm. To be the instrument, everything you play has to be muscle memory.
Right.
When I play the piano doesn't have to remember to hit that, for the hammers to hit the strings. And I have to not have to remember what fingers to hit the keys. So there's a lot more emphasis on it as being the other part of the agreement. But of the 2, the first one is much more important. In other words, somebody could have never played the piano before. And if they were in the space, get a resonance within their being that is beyond anything most professional pianists have ever experienced. And the only point of music is what you get not what comes out even, but what you get from it. So you say, what about giving to the audience? Well, how does a light bulb light a room? Does it light a room by going, I have the responsibility to light up this room? Or does it just sit there and then someone shoves a whole bunch of electronics through a thing and makes it buzz like this? What does every self-respecting musician have to go after? More than God, a buzz. The greatest musicians were after a buzz. And when it's buzzing, everything's cool. So a light unfailingly does its duty. It's dharma. The Sanskrit word for dharma is dharma. It does its dharma by receiving the, what do you call it? The current. Mm-hmm. The current causes to vibrate and the room is alit. So we need to be responsive to what the music goes inside and vibrate with it. And it doesn't matter if it's this. In fact, one of the exercises of effortless mastery is patently getting over that it has to make sense or not. But see, here's another one of those paradoxes. As soon as the musician, whatever, I do it with every instrument, by the way. It's not just the piano. In fact, it's not even mostly piano, mostly guitar players. Because there's probably 9 guitar players for every one of everything else in the school.
Oh, yeah.
So they have guitar players, and I have a way of doing the first step with them, the second step. But basically, I'm talking to you, and my hands are making these choices. Now, you might notice that every note is perfect. You might have said, well, you could have written this down. This is some kind of 12-tone, blah, blah, blah. You know, John Cage died for your sins, whatever you want to call it. 20th century music. No, this is perfection. Perfection exists where the human ego is not. So my ego's not in this. Or the other thing I like to say, but I changed one of the words in my book, perfection already exists. It's humans that fuck it up.
Right.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So here's what happens. Somebody does this, and suddenly they realize that something they're playing is oddly so meaningful. And then they jump in. Oh, I got to manage this. Not consciously, subconsciously. That, in order to learn this, is when you drop your hands. As soon as the ego wants to participate, you drop your hands. And in that way, you're training your mind the way you would train a dog. If the dog won't sit when you open the door, you close the door again. Until finally you open the door, that dog won't move until you tell him to leave. You have to do that with your ego. So I'm playing something going, wow, this is cool, man. Blah, blah, blah. Drop my hands. Or even I'm doing this. Even playing something that's supposed to be so soulful, so sweet. And I suddenly go, no, drop my hands. It's even sweeter if I'm not part of it.
That's very powerful. Even from just a perspective of just actual, just the act of physically practicing, right? Just stopping when there's a mistake, right? Or some unintended.
Stopping when you're mistake, because that's the best way to be aware of what spot you need to work on.
Right.
But also stopping when you've lost the space,
right.
Because you're going to practice in quantum rather than with that kind of focus.
Right.
You can train yourself to practice on a higher level. But when you do it, the ultimate objective is practicing from the space, not what you're practicing. That comes later. Right. Just like when you're learning to play from the space, the ultimate thing is not whether you sound good or not, but is it coming from the space? And as soon as you think you're doing it, like I've seen piano players start to do this, and they go, oh yeah, 12 tone, drop your hands. It's all bullshit now. What the hand wants to do. So the way you keep the ego out is as soon as the ego comes in, you drop your hand. Then the third step is playing something you know really well. Okay? I'll use a good example, Horace Silver's tune called Peace. So remember I told you before we started, I'm a ventriloquist? I'm talking to you, but someone's playing piano. It must be the dummy. Unbearably happy already. It's what the music's giving me. Of course, if I didn't know the music that easily, this would not be the example I would use.
Right.
Now, what was I going to say to you? thinks jazz is not the street doesn't play it very well. As far as I'm concerned, you can feel that as much as grunge or punk or anything. You have to know how to play it.
Right.
So that you don't have to manage it, right? So what I was saying is that there's something about the fourth step. Oh yeah, so the third step is playing something you really know. Because even there, people dim the light on what they know because they try to do more with it than they're able to do. Again, ego. So you're practicing. I'm going. That's how I go. Drop your hands. All three steps, it's like as soon as you get in there and ruin what's already perfect, you drop your hands. The fourth step, hopefully you've built up chops now with staying out of the way, ego staying out of the way, is a very hyper-focused way. I recommend anybody that's read the book to reread the fourth step. It's about the most focused way that you could needlepoint on aspects of your playing. And just 2 bars, by the time they play on that level, you're on the precipice of creating new muscle memory, which you'll feel globally through everything you're playing. But you have to be ready to do that. If your mind gets in the way, it's 3 steps to get you there. Each one's got a bigger bait on the hook. One is just dropping your fingers. You know there are people that can't do this much on their instrument without caring? So the first thing is take your time. When you get to the point where you're not doing this, great. Second step, not necessarily in order, let your fingers choose. And as soon as it's you choosing, drop your hands. You know, ding, gong, ging, gong, guitar, boom, gong, go low. Don't think of it as low register. Don't think of it as the high register. Think of this 6 inches to the left and this 6 inches to the right. You know, you're really preparing the instrument to become the vehicle without all your biases and limitations and prejudices, you know?
Right.
So there you go. Second step. Now, third step. Can you play a tune without getting in the way and trying to make more of it than you're ready to do? And you've got all that. You can play a tune, you know. See, now what is my mind doing? My mind's going, yeah, thank you. Ah, beautiful. What does your mind do when you get into a jacuzzi? It goes, yeah, man. Oh, boy. That's what the mind does. But the instrument, your relationship to the instrument has to be that which soothes you, that which relieves your mind, that which is an escape, that which is a release. This music is made from pure release. That relationship with the instrument. So that's kind of soup to nuts.
Yeah, and that'll translate really well to the listener, like you've mentioned, and does, you know, like if you write from that space, you play from that space, you'll create that space for others. Like you'll point to something within them. To
a lot of people
out.
come to the gig, the audience, and my favorite comment is not that they dug it was really great jazz, because a lot of them, I'm proud to say, don't know what jazz is. They'll say, I was lifted into this other place in my heart. And it's even good for business because they want that again. So it's the same things on this record, come to another concert, but that's not the point. You know that you're a vessel for others to drink from the trough, so to speak, you know?
Right.
It even gives you more of a reason to play music as opposed to that ever narcissistic reason. How do I sound? How do I play? Me, my, you know, my music. What the hell is that? I mean, I respect it because there's a lot of great players that are still living that thing. But a lot of players it doesn't work for. And even the players that live in that thing, very often, if you really talk to them a little further, they aspire to this same thing. And they're doing it. And everybody can say there's been moments where I was just a participant and it seemed to be happening. So effortless mastery is a science of having that experience more often, or a process of it. There's a million ways to get there, you know?
Yeah.
I think we've covered it.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Anything else you want to ask me before we...
Well, I just wanted to remark that how beautiful it is that when you're coming from that space, it doesn't have to be about, you know, you're helping other people realize this reality just through your music alone, right? And it's not about pointing at yourself. You're having more fun. They're having a more meaningful experience, and you're bringing presence. You're bringing this amazing gift to the world of just showing them what life is really about through just a few notes. The recording.
It's not about God. So I'm going to say, I don't care what. It's not about God. It's not spirituality unless it is for you. But if you watch Miles to play,
Mm-hmm.
I use two videos very often as different examples of the space. So you watch Miles Davis Quintet playing So What? It's a TV show called Perspectives or something. It's the first thing that comes up. It's a very cool 50s black and white TV show. And they play So What? And then Miles takes a solo. You see this far off look. Miles is in some kind of a pleasure space, buzzing from within. And he's, without saying it, drawing you into experience it with him, right? Then Train plays the next solo, and he looks like he's praying to something. It has a different feeling, like he's saying, please fill me with this information, master, whoever that is. When he converted out of drugs, he converted to a very deep spiritualism, which is all about very Eastern, the idea that there's the self. Let the self play rather than the small self,
Mm-hmm.
So you can see two, and then after that, it's great. But I mean, it's a great example. Another one I like to show is, and I love even saying it, Clark Terry playing Mac the Knife with the Oscar Peterson Trio.
Yeah.
Looked at not a record, but actually them playing it live. He comes out there, and I'm not even talking about Oscar. I'm talking about Clark Terry. You see perfect effortless mastery. You hear perfect music, the placement, the phrasing, every note perfect. Free, funny, and he's completely in a zone that's probably more comfortable than if he was standing in that same spot and not playing.
Right.
So I would say those two videos, the Miles Davis Quintet, So What, and Clark Terry with the Oscar Peterson Trio playing Mac the Knife.
Yeah. No, those are great examples. Kenny, I think, it was a real treat having you on here because, this has been a conversation I've been wanting to have for a while. And I think this is really useful for people as far as,
I hope so.
Yeah, it's especially my audience here. Some of them really put a lot of pressure on themselves. So this is very important stuff. So
I hope your audience grows to 1 million people because I'd like to say this to more people if possible.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Yeah, I'm starting to, broaden the, the guests I have on here, having psychologists and all of that. So, definitely. Where could people find you?
They can find me at Kidding. Well, there's not really much information on the website anymore. It's all dated. There's Facebook page. There's Effortless Mastery, I think, Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have my assistant send you, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Effortless Mastery is a Facebook and an Instagram. Yeah.
Basically, if people Google you or find you on any
network, I think you find all the same stuff you find with everybody.
Sure.
And my music is, at least the record of my music is recorded on my website.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look for that, and I have a YouTube channel. I forgot about that. And what's the thing? Is it Experience? No.
Instagram?
No, the thing where people pay a little bit of money and they get.
Oh, Patreon.
Patreon. There's a Patreon site.
Oh, sweet. So
there's a lot of ways to get these messages.
Yeah, no, really good. And that book you have eventually dropping when you find a publisher. What was it again?
Becoming the Instrument.
Becoming the Instrument. So we look forward to that. And, for those of you who are watching later on, Google it. And if it's out, get it because it'll impact you greatly. All right, Kenny, it's been great having you.
That's been fun.
Yeah. So I'll be seeing you soon, all right?
Absolutely, man. Take care, everybody. I hope you experience just a little taste of the sweetness of your own self, your own voice, through the medium of playing your music.